You're watching Forsaken Joe. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy the story. Let's begin.
I was engaged to Kelsey for 3 years, and I thought we had something solid. She'd just gotten promoted to assistant stage manager at this big regional theater, and I was proud of her. But things started to shift when she began working closely with the new director, Sean, a flashy Broadway guy who was all charisma and sharp suits. At first, I didn't think much of the late nights, rehearsal overages, she called them. I cooked dinner, waited up, listened to her vent about the theater, all the stuff I figured was normal. I thought I was being a good partner. But then late turned into don't wait up, and her run-throughs started looking like an excuse to dress up like it was opening night. I should have noticed earlier. No one stays at work that late unless there's something more happening. And I guess I was too blind to see it. I wanted to believe the best. Maybe I still do. Kelsey's wardrobe shifted overnight. Dresses I'd never seen before started showing up in her closet. Always a little too dressy for our usual nights in. She was wearing new perfume, something sweet, heavy, almost too much. I didn't recognize it. Then came the hair appointments, bi-weekly, sometimes more, and I wasn't sure why. She never used to care about that kind of thing. She'd come home around midnight, smelling like cologne I didn't own. I'd wait up, half watching TV, half hoping she'd let something slip, something real about the day. But she never did. Every answer about the theater was vague. Oh, nothing much happened. Just the usual stuff. Her phone started buzzing more at night, like it couldn't wait to light up. Texts from Sean, always short and sweet. Cars out front. Or you crushed that today. He was always so present. Always in her texts, in her world. I didn't even know what he sounded like. But I sure knew his name. It wasn't just me. My friends started noticing, too. Morgan, the costume designer who knew both of them, asked me why I still seemed so okay with everything. I'd say, "It's fine, they're just working." But Morgan gave me that look. The one that says you know better. She dodged my questions about those all-night rehearsals. She changed the subject, suddenly busy with her own work. And Eric, my brother, well, he didn't pull any punches. "Dude, she's playing you," he said one night over beers. "That's not dedication. That's cheating with stage directions." The words hit harder than I expected. I laughed it off, because what else was I supposed to do? He wasn't the one sleeping next to her every night, was he? I didn't want to be that guy. The suspicious fiancé. The one who doesn't trust his partner. I told myself I was overthinking it. I had to be. But deep down, something started to settle. A gnawing feeling I couldn't shake. The more I tried to convince myself it was fine, the more it felt like I was just lying to myself. One afternoon, Mr. Delgado, my boss at the sports media company, called me into his office with a proposal. He'd been talking about expanding the team for a while, but this time it was serious. He offered me the chance to run the new podcast division in Chicago, 60% raise, a City View apartment, full relocation. It was a game changer, but I turned it down. I couldn't ask Kelsey to give up her career. She was just getting momentum at the theater, and this was her chance. I thought I was being noble, like I was doing the right thing. I thought I was putting her first. When I mentioned it to her that night, she barely looked up from her phone. She was scrolling, her eyes glued to the screen, fingers tapping like she couldn't be bothered to give me her full attention. "Sean says I have real growth here," she said without missing a beat. Sean says, those 2 words started showing up in every conversation. It was like he had replaced me in her life. It wasn't I think or I feel anymore. It was always Sean says. Like her thoughts were only worth what he'd decided for her. I tried not to let it get to me, but it did. Even when Delgado warned me the position wouldn't stay open forever, I still turned it down. I didn't even have to think about it. I was stuck in this loop of convincing myself that putting Kelsey first was the right choice. But when she came home that night smelling like Sean's aftershave, strong, sharp, like he'd been close enough to leave it on her skin, I felt that familiar ache of something slipping away. She didn't even notice the change in me, though. She just took a quick shower, as usual, then left her phone face down on the kitchen counter. I was so used to it by now, the silence that followed every time she'd come home. Her phone always face down, like it was a secret that didn't belong to me. I stood there for a second, looking at it, thinking about how easily she had started to keep things from me. She'd always said she had nothing to hide. But if I couldn't even look at her phone without wondering what was being kept from me, how was that nothing? But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Not then. I had made excuses for her before, told myself she was busy, that she had her own life to live. Maybe she just didn't want to burden me. But the more I told myself that, the more I felt like I was the only one left in this relationship who was still showing up. She came out of the shower, face glowing like she was untouchable. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to ask her why she was so distant, why it felt like there was a wall between us. But I didn't. Instead, I just stood there, watching her move through the apartment, and let the quiet settle in like it had a right to be there. Sean's name was always there now, even when it wasn't said aloud. I didn't need her to say it anymore. I felt it in the air, heavy, suffocating. Delgado gave me a final deadline. Monday morning, or the job would be reassigned. That night, I decided to take Kelsey out to dinner. Maybe, I thought, we could finally have a real conversation. Maybe I could tell her how I was feeling and see if there was any chance we could fix things before everything else started falling apart. But when I told her, she brushed it off. I have to stay late again. Sean needs me to prep set cues, she said, already halfway out the door, phone in hand. I could see it in her face. It wasn't just that she was busy. It was that she didn't care. She wasn't even trying to make time for us anymore. I sat there, the silence between us feeling like a weight. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was fighting for something that wasn't even in front of me. I was losing her, and I knew it. When do I matter in this relationship? I asked, not expecting an answer but needing to ask anyway. It felt like a line I should have said long ago, but it just hadn't come together until that moment. She rolled her eyes, like the question was beneath her. If you don't trust me working late with my director, maybe we shouldn't be together. The words hit me like a slap. She was so sure of herself, so dismissive. It wasn't just the late nights with Sean anymore. It was everything she'd been ignoring, everything I'd been turning a blind eye to. And she was telling me, straight up, that I wasn't even worth the effort to make this work. That line stuck with me. It hung in the air between us, thick and cold, as I stared at her. I didn't know what to say. It wasn't a question anymore. It was a truth I didn't want to face. I sat there for a long moment, not knowing if I could even get the words out. But when I finally spoke, my voice was steady, colder than I expected. You're absolutely right. I don't know why I said it like that, but I couldn't back down. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. So, I pulled my phone from my pocket, tapped out the email to Delgado, and hit send. I'll take the job. Start date in 2 weeks. I didn't even look at her after that. I didn't need to. I knew what her face would look like. Shock, disbelief, maybe even some anger. But I didn't care anymore. She didn't say anything at first, and that was even worse than what I expected. She just stood there, staring at me, probably waiting for me to change my mind, like I always had before. But I couldn't. I wasn't waiting for her to make me a priority anymore. Her eyes burned into me, like she thought I'd back down, like she thought I was bluffing. Maybe she thought I didn't have the guts to walk away, but I did. And for the first time in months, I felt like I had control again. When I told her, I'm leaving, her mouth opened, like she was going to argue, but nothing came out. She just stood there, frozen, looking like I'd slapped her. For a moment, I almost felt bad. Almost. But I knew deep down this was the right thing. I packed that night while she was on the phone with Sean. I could hear her whispering from the other room, her voice a little too soft, a little too careful. He knows, she said, and it felt like a punch in the gut. She didn't even try to hide it anymore. It wasn't a secret anymore. I kept packing. I didn't look at her. There was nothing left to say. She tried everything. Guilt, tears, gaslighting. She told me I was overreacting, that I was jealous of her ambition. Like that was a good enough excuse for everything she'd done. It was almost like she didn't even believe she'd crossed any lines. like I was the one with the problem. She said I didn't get it, that I didn't understand how hard she was working, how important this was for her. But I did get it. I got it all too well. I called a locksmith, changed the locks. I wasn't wasting any more time waiting for her to wake up and realize what she'd done. Packed her stuff in boxes. It felt almost surreal, like I was just going through the motions of something I should have done months ago. I wrote a note, something short but final. You made your choice. I left it on the kitchen counter, next to a half-empty bottle of wine she never finished. I don't know why I didn't just say it to her face. Maybe I was done with the fight. Maybe I just didn't have the energy to listen to her excuses anymore. By 11 p.m., the text started. You're overreacting. Nothing happened. You're ruining us. I didn't reply. Not then, not ever again. I zipped up my bag, grabbed my phone, and booked a hotel near the airport. It was a small, quiet room, but it was mine. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. I don't know when the last time I felt like myself was. But when I closed the door to that hotel room behind me, it hit me. I wasn't suffocating anymore. And maybe that was all I needed to know. I was sitting on the edge of the bed in the hotel room when my phone buzzed. It was Jonah. I didn't even know how he got my number, but when I saw the name, I felt a little bit of hope. The kind of hope that wasn't really hope, just the last shred of belief that maybe everything wasn't as bad as I thought. He sent me screenshots. I opened the first one. It was a group chat between Sean and the theater crew. They were joking about after-hours rehearsals, but it was clear what they were really talking about. They were betting on how long it would take before I figured it out. The next one was worse. Kelsey had texted something that made my stomach drop. I have to pretend to care about him. I stared at the words, feeling like the room had suddenly closed in on me. It was like everything I had been refusing to see was laid out in front of me in black and white. The betrayal was real, and there was no denying it anymore. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't look away from the screen. It wasn't just the affair. It was the cruelty in the way they'd all talked about me. It felt like I was the joke, like I was the one they were laughing at behind my back. I didn't know how long I sat there, scrolling through the rest of the messages, reading the things they said about me, about us. It was sickening. The knock on the door startled me. I wasn't ready for it, but I opened it anyway. It was Kelsey's mom, her sister, and her best friend. They all barged in, faces full of concern, like they had no idea what was really going on. They tried to talk me out of leaving, tried to make me believe this was just a misunderstanding, that Kelsey hadn't meant any of it. But it wasn't a misunderstanding. I didn't have the energy for their pleas, so I showed them the screenshots. One by one, I passed my phone around, making them read every last word. I watched their faces change as they read. The shock, the disbelief. I didn't care if they were disappointed in Kelsey. I was past that. Her sister was the first to speak. Kelsey, how could you? She said, and for the first time, I saw her truly see her sister for what she was, a liar. Her voice shook with anger as she turned to Kelsey, who was standing there with her arms crossed, face flushed. You're a liar, her sister said again, louder this time. You've been lying to all of us. Kelsey didn't respond. She just stood there, her eyes darting around, like she didn't know where to look anymore. She didn't even try to deny it. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence, and I knew it was over. I stood up and grabbed my bag. I'm leaving, I said, my voice steady, even though everything inside me felt like it was breaking. I wasn't waiting for her to fix this. I wasn't waiting for any more apologies or excuses. I was done. I walked out of that hotel room without looking back. I didn't even care if they followed me. I didn't care if they tried to stop me. I reached the airport in 20 minutes. This time, nobody tried to stop me. Not her, not her family, not anyone. I walked straight to the terminal, checked in for my flight, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt free. Landing in Chicago felt like stepping out of a nightmare. The weight that had been on my chest for months, maybe longer, started to lift as soon as the wheels hit the tarmac. The city was big, bright, and buzzing with energy. Nothing like the stale quiet I'd left behind. Delgado had sent a driver to pick me up. The car was sleek, the kind of ride I'd only seen in movies. It felt unreal, like someone had taken a snapshot of my life and made it better, cleaner, faster. The apartment he'd lined up for me was more than I expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows, an incredible view of the skyline. I stood there for a moment, just staring out at the city. This was mine. I had earned this, and for once, it felt like something good was actually happening. The job itself was everything I needed. It didn't just pay well. It actually made me feel respected. At the sports media company, people treated each other like professionals. No one used late nights as an excuse to hook up or dodge responsibility. I didn't have to second-guess every conversation or worry about being the last to know what was really going on. I wasn't the new guy anymore, just someone who showed up, did his job, and went home. The team was solid. Everyone seemed to have their shit together. They asked me about my past, about where I was from, and I gave them short answers. Said I moved here for a better life. It was true, but there was a lot more to it than that. Still, I didn't feel the need to open up. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Weeks went by. I started getting into a rhythm, waking up early, hitting the gym, getting through the workday with focus. For the first time in months, I felt like I had control over my life. It was mine again. And then my phone buzzed. It was Kelsey. The first time it happened, I opened the message. It was just her asking if I was okay. A checking in text. I didn't respond. But the next day there was another one. Then the day after that. You should talk to me. We need to figure this out. Please. Took a couple weeks, but I finally stopped checking. I stopped opening the messages. I knew what they would say, and I knew it didn't matter anymore. I didn't owe her an explanation. I didn't owe her anything. I couldn't go back to what we were. Not after everything that happened. Not after seeing the truth laid out in front of me. I had made the decision, and it was the right one. It was Jonah who called. Dude, you won't believe this. His voice was lighter than usual, like he was enjoying it too much. Sean's wife found out. He's married with 2 kids. The whole theater world's imploding. I leaned back in my chair, barely processing at first. Jonah had always been the first to know the gossip, but hearing this felt like I was getting the last piece of the puzzle, the one I didn't even want to finish. He went on, telling me how the whole mess was unraveling. Apparently, Sean's wife had gotten wind of what was going on and decided to make things public. The company got slammed with legal threats. The board of directors had to clean house. Sean's name was blacklisted now from half the regional theaters in the Midwest, and his career was over. And Kelsey? She wasn't exactly skating by either. Jonah said she got fired. No surprise there, considering how much damage Sean's betrayal had caused. The theater community wasn't stupid. They weren't about to keep her on, not after everything she'd been a part of. She was tainted now just as much as he was. She's back at her mom's place, Jonah said. She's been trying to salvage what's left, but it's not looking good. Oh, and get this, she's been dating her yoga instructor. I laughed, despite myself. Really? After everything with Sean? Yeah, but wait for it. The yoga guy? Turns out he's been cheating on her with another client. Karma's a bitch, man. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then Jonah kept going, telling me how Kelsey's financial mess was coming to light too. She'd been claiming housing benefits under her mom's address to save money. And of course, the IRS had caught on. She was in for a world of trouble. Hearing all of this should have felt like victory, but instead, I just felt calm. It wasn't that I was happy she was falling apart. Honestly, it was just the relief of knowing that it wasn't my problem anymore. She was living in the mess she had created for herself, and I didn't have to fix it. I didn't have to feel sorry for her anymore. I didn't have to wonder if I'd made the right choice. Jonah could have kept going with the details, but I wasn't really listening anymore. The only thing I needed to know was that I had chosen myself. And that felt better than any revenge ever could. You okay, man? Jonah asked, his voice softening a little, like he could tell I was zoning out. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. Yeah, I'm good. Just glad it's over. And that was the truth. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had left all the baggage behind, and it didn't weigh on me anymore. I didn't need to know the rest of her story. Her choices didn't concern me. I had my own life to live now. 2 months later, I was walking out of my office building when I saw her, Kelsey, standing there, right across the street, like some ghost from my past, waiting. Her arms were crossed tightly over her chest, and she looked different, smaller, like the weight of the world had settled on her shoulders. I stopped for a second, my stomach twisting. She saw me. She didn't hesitate. She crossed the street in a few quick strides, and I could tell she'd been waiting for this moment, just like I had. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, like she was already defeated. "I know you don't want to see me, but I need to explain." I didn't know why I agreed. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was just the need to finally hear her say the words I'd been waiting to hear. Either way, I found myself walking with her to a coffee shop down the street. The air between us was thick, like there was something hanging in the space that we both knew but couldn't say yet. We sat down at a small table, the hum of the cafe buzzing around us. I was trying to stay calm, to not let the old anger creep back in. She spoke first. Her voice was shaky, like she didn't know how to start. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I feel like I was just unseen, you know? Like you were there, but you didn't really see me. And Sean, he made me feel alive. He made me feel important." I was already tuning her out. She was spinning the same story, the same excuses. I had heard it all before, and it didn't mean anything to me anymore. "It wasn't physical," she added quickly, like that somehow made it better. "It wasn't like that." I just stared at her for a second, letting her words hang in the air between us. Her eyes were still desperate, looking for some kind of validation, some reason for me to forgive her, to go back to what we had. But there was nothing left to save. And then, just like that, she dropped the bomb. "What if I'm pregnant?" Her voice cracked as the words left her mouth, and she looked at me with wide eyes, waiting for my reaction. I laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. It was just disbelief. A sound that came from the pit of my stomach because I couldn't believe we were still here, still playing this game. "We haven't had sex in 2 months, Kelsey," I said, my voice flat. "If you're pregnant, congratulations to Sean. He's the one who's been around." She blinked, the words sinking in like a punch to the gut. She looked stunned for a moment, but then the tears came. She started crying, right there in the middle of the cafe, like she hadn't done enough damage already. The people around us were starting to notice, but I didn't care. Couldn't care. I sat there, watching her cry, feeling nothing but the cold distance that had grown between us. She was a stranger now. I didn't flinch. I didn't reach out to comfort her. I just sat there, letting her cry until the tears stopped, and there was nothing left to say. "Goodbye, Kelsey," I said, my voice steady. It was the finality in my words that made her look up, her face red and tear-streaked. She didn't say anything after that. She just sat there, staring at me, maybe waiting for me to take it all back. But I wasn't. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked out of the coffee shop without looking back. I could feel the weight lifting off my chest with every step, like I was finally walking away from everything that had held me down. It was over, for good. 6 months into my new life, things were starting to feel right. I'd been promoted at work. Delgado said I'd leveled up, and it felt good to hear it. The job was rewarding, the team was solid, and I finally felt like I was building something for myself instead of always cleaning up someone else's mess. My apartment felt like home now. I wasn't just living in a place. I had settled in, got comfortable, and it was the first time in a long while that I could wake up and breathe without wondering what kind of day it would be. I woke up early, hit the gym, even started writing again. Something I hadn't done since I was with Kelsey. Funny how the small things you lose along the way feel like they're worth more when you find them again. That's when I met Clara. It was at a board game cafe, something simple and low-key. I don't even know why I decided to go. Just needed a change of pace. She was sitting at a table with a friend, laughing at something ridiculous, and when she caught me looking, she waved me over. I didn't know it then, but that moment would change everything. She was easy to talk to, not like Kelsey, who always seemed like she was distracted or on the edge of something else. Clara was present, honest, not trying to be anyone other than herself. We played a few rounds, and I couldn't help but notice how she laughed at my bad jokes. Not in that fake, polite way, but like she genuinely thought they were funny. She listened when I talked, actually listened, and I didn't have to fight for her attention. There was no game being played, just two people enjoying each other's company. When she asked, "What made you move to Chicago?" I gave her the honest answer. Got tired of being someone's afterthought. She didn't ask me to explain, didn't look at me like I was some broken man to fix. She just nodded, and it was like she understood everything without me having to say another word. I used to think love meant compromise. That's what Kelsey had taught me. That love was about adjusting, giving up pieces of yourself for the other person. I thought that's what relationships were supposed to be. But now I know love is different. It's about being with someone who actually shows up. Someone who respects you, who values you the way you should be valued. Clara showed me that. Kelsey had taught me what betrayal felt like. But Clara, she reminded me what respect looks like. Sometimes, choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival.